I'm the one who has the last word. The last word is important, right? Who has the last word? Okay, so I'll try and make it interesting and I'll try and make it crisp and short. I know you've had a long day of technology. The topic which I am going to present has nothing to do with technology. So you can relax. It's a very pertinent topic, very important. Not about technology. It's something which we all read about and hear about in the management books, perhaps the most written about topic in management till date. It's about leadership. All of us have at least one book of leadership at home, right? Before I start on the topic, I'll tell you a small story from India. I'm from India, so I'll give you a small history story from India, one of very important events in Indian history. And then I'll tell you why I'm telling you that story. So this was about 500 years ago in India, roughly about 500 years ago, in the north of India, near New Delhi, where it was a month of April, summer month. There was a small army of about 12,000 soldiers, which was camping on the outskirts of Delhi in North India, and they had a very important battle to fight the next day. And this army had a very low morale, shoulders were drooping, and the enthusiasm was low. The reason was because the battle next day was with the Sultan of Delhi, and he had 100,000 plus, 120,000 plus soldiers and more than 100 elephants. In that time, 500 years ago, elephants were a big thing to have in the army. And the smaller army was only about 12,000 people. So they knew that they will perish the next day and it's going to be over for them. The king of the small army, he sensed the calm, the uneasy calm amongst his ranks, and he decided to speak to his soldiers and his generals. Now, in the history books, they say that the speech that he gave, or the talk that he gave, was so inspiring and so stirring that people in the army, they all rose up and they all pledged their lives, and they said, even if we die, no matter what, we will win the battle tomorrow. As expected, next day morning, the larger army of 120,000 plus soldiers was marching towards the smaller army, and there was a river in between, and they say that the king of the small army was the first one to dive into the river to meet the enemy on the other side. Needless to say, his army followed. They did not have elephants. They had about 12, 15 cannons, cannons. So they used these cannons to fire on the elephants. And then the battle, a fierce battle was fought. It was over in 3 hours. Any idea who won the battle? The smaller army won the battle. The elephants trampled their own soldiers under their feet. The 12,000 people of the small army were all aiming for one person, which was the king of the big army. The king of the large army was killed on the battlefield. Within 3 hours, the battle was over. Can anyone guess which battle is this? This is one of the most important battles in Indian history. So, I don't expect everyone to answer this, but yes, this was the first battle of Panipat. 1526, 21st of April. Why is this an important battle? Because this laid the foundation of the Mughal Empire in India. This was the first Mughal ruler who came into India, defeated Ibrahim Lodi, who was the Sultan of Delhi. Mughals, after that, ruled a major portion of India for about 200 years, 7 generations. They gave us the Taj Mahal, they gave us a lot of heritage and culture. So it was a very decisive battle between the small king and the large king, where the small army, the small leader, won the battle. Now, there's a lot of lessons to be learned on what the leader did well. He led from front. He was the first one to jump into the river. The leader was sensitive enough to sense the uneasy calm in the ranks. The leader had the ability to speak and communicate with his soldiers. The leader had the foresight to use the cannons to fire on the elephants and strategize. So there are a lot of great things that the winning leader did. But the history books do not tell us what was the fault of the leader who failed. There sure must have been things which he failed to see. There must have been things which he failed to comprehend and predict. And hence, in spite of having a bigger force, he lost the battle. So today we talk about, not a long presentation, just 10 or 12 slides. And to make it interesting for you, I'll invite you to do something in these 10, 12 slides. I will invite you to rank yourself on each trait. I will talk about 10 or 12 characteristics or traits of leaders. All of us are leaders in some way or the other in our organizations, departments, at home, in the community. So rate yourself on these traits from 0 to 5. So 0 being something which means that this trait is not present at all in your personality. 5 means this trait is definitely present by all means everywhere. Okay? Just to make it interesting, last presentation, so I think just to get ourselves a little energized before we go. Every man has his Waterloo. All of us have these traits. If I look at myself, I think I have all of these and in abundance, the traits which make a leader fail. Let's see. The first one is what I call the prisoners of the ivory cage. Now, these are leaders, and having worked over the years, almost 18, 19, almost 2 decades now, worked with several leaders across, maybe close to 300-400 different leaders of organizations, mostly hospitals and healthcare. Now, there are some of the CEOs or some senior guys, what they do is they come to the office and they sit in the office and then they never leave their office till evening. And they do it day after day, week after week, month after month. They only sit in the office. All meetings will either happen in the office or in the adjacent room to the office, and they never leave. They never go to the hospital shop floor. They never visit the wards. They never go and ask the nurses how things are going. They never have outside networking with other organizations or within their own organization. The personality is they're not in touch with reality. They are aloof. Disadvantages, unrealistic decisions. Of course, we're not in touch with reality. Unrealistic decisions. Very few people who can reach that leader can influence. Otherwise, there's nobody who can influence that leader and cannot, not reachable. Eventually, how they are done in, what happens to them eventually, something which was lingering or brewing in the organization, and they did not keep an eye because they never got out of the ivory cage. It snowballs and becomes too large to handle, and then they perish. So that's what happens to leaders who are prisoners of the ivory cage. Remember, 0 to 5, keep ranking yourself. There are tough warriors, plenty of these, right? So these are the guys who will not allow anyone to enter into their territory, and these are the guys who will probably invade other guys' territories and try to. So this 3 people, small department doesn't report to me. Okay, I will get the board and I'll influence, and these 3 guys should report to me. That region, that geography, not under my control. I need that geography under my control. So they need to extend the control all the time and control as much as they want. And if somebody else wants a control from there, a share of their pie, they are very aggressive and defensive about it. So these are the tough warriors. What happens to them in the end? They get done in by what? 2 things. Either they acquire so much territory that they cannot manage it, and then it backfires on them, or there is a rival who becomes bigger than them and takes away whatever they have. That's what happens to them. This is an interesting one. These are the ones who have a lot of skeletons in the closet. Many leaders, and I've seen lots of those, who sidestep any interpersonal conflicts that are there in the team. So if my subordinate and his manager don't talk to each other, then I don't want to deal with it. It's their problem, they should solve it. I will not solve it. Or if there are 2 general managers in my company and they don't see eye to each other, okay, fine, that's their problem, nothing to do with me. But what happens in that is, and what we think, oh, they're mature, they're professional, they will manage, why should I get into this whole game? But what happens is it becomes bigger and bigger, and then it influences the performance and effectiveness of the organization. So these are the leaders who get usually done in by these conflicts becoming bigger, snowballing, and then becomes too large to handle. Execution is poor because there is an undercurrent all the time between 2 people who are not talking. They may not be saying it face to face, but you can always feel the uneasiness. This is another interesting one. People who are on mission, but they don't have a vision. They want to do something every day. They have to go somewhere, but where they have to go, nobody knows. So this says, where are we going? He says, I don't know. I thought you knew. No, I don't know. Maybe he knows. No, he definitely doesn't know. Maybe no one knows, but at least we are going somewhere, and maybe it's good when we get there. So people are going everywhere, all over the place, but there's no unified vision to get somewhere. Organizations which usually have leaders with this dominant trait, in those organizations, the sense of direction is very poor. There is some bit of chaos and confusion. The lower ranks are disillusioned, and they don't know really what they're doing. They're doing a lot of things, but to what end, nobody knows. wrong choices, this is what they get done in by, and in the end, they prove it's too costly to make amends. This is something which is also common. And these are people who want the center stage. They want to hog the limelight all the time. The organization may or may not be important, but my prestige is important. My coverage in media is important. What I say is important. They have big egos, needless to say. They will not listen to what other people are saying. They will always put their own self before the benefit of the organization. And one very peculiar thing is, people who are megalomaniacs in their organizations, you don't see a second line of leaders. You don't see a second rung of leaders who are groomed and ready to take on, because they never allow anyone to prosper. How do they get done in? Well, either the higher management pulls them up, clips their wings, or someone else who wins more support of the employees, because employees don't get heard around when they're around them, so they find somebody else to follow. And then there are these people, and this is important, and I have found it peculiarly, at least in this part of the world, this is something which is common. They are the ones who always want yes. Somebody giving them candid feedback, giving them bad news is not welcome. Someone who always claps, always is, buttering, always is saying the good, those people are welcome. So they always want the yes men around them because they say good things. Somebody giving feedback, not welcome. Again, these guys